What's up, everybody, and welcome to Thursday Night Football, the pre-lock show. We're about 32 minutes out from kickoff, or at least from lineup blocks on DraftKings and FanDuel, and we're going to break down some of our favorite players from the game. Hopefully, you guys got some questions. I got a few of them I've taken notes of so far. We'll get to them in a little bit. Today, Thursday, for the first time this year on this particular show, joined by Kyle Murray, my college football buddy, but he's doing a little NFL pre-lock tonight, giving Squirrel Patrol a breather. Kyle, man, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I think this is the first RG live show that I've been on since 2020, so I'm pumped to be back and talking some football with you.
Yeah, this should be an entertaining game. This is two teams that squared off last year at this exact same time, and it was kind of a blowout. Hopefully, we get a really good game tonight. There's a lot going on tonight. Like on one side, first of all, the spread is 6.5 towards the Eagles, and it's 48.5 is our total. I think if you're Minnesota and you're 0-1 and you were in the playoffs last year and you started off the season so incredible, all those dramatic wins and all that, to start off 0-2 and to put yourself in a little bit of a hole already would not feel good. And that's what you're staring at tonight, facing the Eagles. And then on the flip side, the Eagles were dominant last year. They went into New England in week 1, and people really are not giving them much credit for that win. It's like, well, they let New England come back and hang with them and almost beat them, and it's like they're completely overlooking it. So they definitely want to come out and show a little chutzpah in this one, and put this game away early. Because if they let another team hang around and almost beat them, people are going to start talking. I don't know if they want people to start talking, but anyway, we got a 6.5 and a 48.5. Is there anything on that line that catches your eye for tonight in case somebody wants to place a small wager on that?
Yeah, so I mean, if anybody's open to the DraftKings sportsbook over there, they have that 7-up early win bet again. So I actually took Minnesota money line. Hopefully they can score the first touchdown and take advantage of that. 6 I currently, and I don't feel incredible about it, but that is where I currently would sit. The defense for Philly dealing with some injuries on the back end over there, especially in the secondary. So I think potentially we're seeing the Eagles not at their best here. And I think the Vikings can maybe take.
Yeah, I think we're kind of losing you a little, Kyle, but I think I got the gist of your bet. So we're going to start breaking down some, and I've seen the questions in chat. I'm keeping note of them. We're going to answer them later on in the show, that's for sure. And we want to run through some players first for you guys. If you have any other questions, I'm not ignoring them. Get them in chat. And we'll get to them later on, especially if it's a one-man show. We're going to need a lot of questions because it's looking like maybe a one-man show here, but we're all right. I'm going to start off with DraftKings, and we're going to talk through some players here and, just like we do every week and see if we can't come up. You know what? Before I even do that, we always run through the advantage of the pre-lock show is we have the inactive list come out. We need to see what we can dig into on the inactives. Kyle, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, hopefully.
Okay. I can hear you. You cut out there for a little bit. I'm gonna talk some inactives here real quick. All right. So for Minnesota, there is nothing on that inactive list that stands out. Like that's just a bunch of backups, and I don't think there's anybody of significance right there. Philadelphia is the one that's interesting to me tonight. First off, we knew Kenneth Gainwell was doubtful for tonight, so he's inactive. I don't know how they came to the conclusion that Kenneth Gainwell was their bell cow back, but somehow they did. They've got all this talent in the backfield, and it was Gainwell who started catching momentum in the preseason, and he carried it over to being the guy in week 1, but now he's out. So now we get to see these other guys they brought in, the Rashad Pennies and the DeAndre Swifts of the world, and I'm very interested to see how that plays out. Other notable inactives, definitely James Bradbury is a notable inactive. He's a guy that's on the field for them at cornerback almost all the time. At least last year, a lot of snaps at cornerback. Part of the dynamic duo in that secondary. So that's a big loss right there. We can get into attacking that later on. You've got a really good shutdown corner on one side. and maybe they make life tough on Justin Jefferson, but now you don't have James Bradbury to kind of bail you out on the other side. So that's interesting. Also, Reed Blankenship, a safety for Philly. Not a big snaps guy necessarily, but very talented player. If you look at the tape on him, he's really good at what he does when he's on the field. So that's that's depth right there that's gone. So the secondary for Philly, maybe Minnesota can take advantage of it. What do you think? How you think? Is there any interest there? Well, it leads us right into our quarterbacks. We know Jalen's a stud. We know he's probably the highest owned captain. But what about little Kirk Cousins, man? Does it make you feel better now seeing that inactive list?
Yeah, hopefully my internet's holding up here. I don't know what's going on my end, so I apologize if I'm breaking up here. But yeah, like you mentioned, the injuries and the missing pieces on the back end there in the secondary definitely going to open up some things, in my opinion, for this Minnesota passing game. And obviously, we know that Philly's pretty stout up front, so I do think we might be able to see a little bit of a funnel as well there, funneling towards the secondary and funneling towards a more pass game priority here for this Minnesota passing attack. And we know they have all the weapons on the outside. They have Jefferson, they have Hawkinson in the middle, obviously adding Jordan Addison on the outside as well. So they have the pieces to get it done to passing game as well. So I think that's their path to victory, their path to success from an offensive standpoint tonight as well.
Yes, I agree right there. So, Mr. Jenkins, I got your question. Don't worry, I'm getting to the play of the night soon. Soon we will drop some plays here, some plays of the night. But yeah, I agree that now as far as Jalen, kind of glossed over him, but just the highest owned guy in the game in general. Are you going to be? You think it's an overweight situation, underweight, or are you in line with the field?
Yeah, I think it's probably a situation where I'm going to be overweight. I think I would be more inclined to be a little underweight and potentially, at least from a captain perspective, if I felt better about his upside being strictly through the air. But the thing about Hurts is, he can rush in twice, and obviously that's going to really leave his ceiling to himself and not really be able to correlate those on the outside. So that's the reason why I'm probably going to end up being overweight on what is likely going to be the optimal or chalky captain option tonight.
Yeah, I see. Brickett Jensen is in chat. He says, "I have a feeling Penny goes off." That's going to lead us to the running back. We're going to breeze through some running backs for you real quick. I don't know if Penny goes off, but it would not surprise me one bit. Like we're down to, like, it wouldn't surprise me to see Swift go off. It wouldn't surprise me to see Penny go off. I've even come to the terms with maybe even Boston Scott. Like we just don't know which one of those guys it's going to be, and it could be all three of them. Splitting some snaps all the way right down the middle, and if nobody catches a good bit of variance on the touchdowns, then they could all three be worthless. But I'm pinning my hopes on DeAndre Swift here. Rashad Penny. Just looking at him in the preseason, I know this might not be the best thing to do is go by preseason, but he was really slow and sluggish in the preseason. Didn't look like he had that same burst and that same zip that he had with Seattle for those couple of years. Just looked a little bit behind. I don't know why DeAndre Swift didn't come into this thing and just absolutely dominate and get first team running back honors right away. Like, he should be the most talented out of all these guys. And the fact that he let Gainwell get past him by such a wide margin, that scares me. But I've got to ride with Swift tonight on this thing. With Penny being, I wouldn't play Penny or Swift in the same lineup, but I think one or the other goes off, and Boston Scott is lurking there, and you just never know about Boston Scott, man. He could do some damage. So these Eagles running backs, Kyle, what's your assessment of them?
Yeah, so I guess my first assessment, and I guess the thing that I'm sort of strategizing and theorizing for this game is just to not get super confident with any Eagles running back. Like, we've seen it time and time again over the recent years with, we get excited about one running back and it ends up being a committee, or we get excited about one running back and it ends up being the other one. So, last week, like you kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show, whatever brought the Eagles into thinking that Gainwell was going to be their workhorse guy, that's what got them there. And, we have the same sort of question marks, in my opinion, here with Swift. Sirianni came out and he said that Swift can be a featured guy, but he can also simply just be in the rotation, right? So I would I would like to believe that there's going to be more of a rotation here, and that price tag on Rashad Penny looks awfully cheap, considering I think he's going to be in consideration to maybe even lead this team in carries. So I think Swift will be involved. I think Scott will be. I think all three of these guys will be involved, but Penny's the guy that I think has the most upside based on the price tag here for the Eagles.
All right, you like Penny? I like Swift. I like that we got some varying opinions. Let's take a look at Minnesota's running back situation real quick. Last year, Philly could be beat on the ground, and I don't know that they've made some improvements in that category. That's for sure through the draft. But you're sitting here with Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, the one and two punch here. Does either of these guys do anything for you tonight?
Not particularly. I think Madison might be a guy that goes a little bit lower owned than we're projecting right now, just because I think it's a pretty public sentiment that the matchup is not great here with the tough defensive front there for the Eagles. So maybe that could be something interesting to get overweight on Alexander Madison. And again, he could easily find the end zone a couple of times here. We saw him last week. He didn't get a ton of work, but the thing is, there was no real threat for touches behind him. Chandler had 3 carries. CJ Ham actually got mixed in with a couple of carries there as well. But for the most part, Madison has a pretty good hold on the rushing share and the rushing volume for this team. And if he falls in the end zone a couple of times or maybe breaks a long run or two, he could easily find his way in terms of being better than the public might think here tonight.
Yeah, and looking in chat here, keeping track of all the questions. I'll get to them in a little bit. But King something dash says, I'm putting Swift at captain. I don't mind that, man. I don't hate that move at captain. Gets you away from the chalky Jalen Hurts captain, which I'm okay with Hurts too. He is who he is. But you put Swift in there, and you're hoping that that's the rushing touchdowns and not Jalen Hurts sneaking it in. And if you can do that, I don't know that Jalen Hurts is going to have the passing type of game, strictly passing, to really make himself a really good captain there. So yeah, I like that, man. That's a good leverage play. So shoot through some wide receivers real quick. On one side, I mean, these teams are loaded with wide receivers, man. Both of them. Let's talk about Philly real quick. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, kind of like 1A, 1B. Who knows? In different weeks, they go off. And looking at that game last year between these teams, Hurts spread it around. There's no really one particular great matchup for one of these guys that stands out to me. So are you like down the middle on these guys, or do you have one that stands out for you?
I think I give the lean to Smith slightly just because of the price, but obviously, I'm rarely going to object to anyone who wants to play AJ Brown. The guy is absolutely fantastic, and I think the matchup is just fine here for him. But I do think that, with my exposure to Hurts and the captain, and I think a lot of the upside for Hurts is going to be with his rushing upside. So I think I'll save a little bit of salary with his pass catchers, and that leads me to Smith over Brown slightly. When looking down the depth chart, there's not really a whole lot that I like. Last week we saw an extremely condensed target share between just Smith and AJ Brown here, and they didn't really even get Dallas Goedert involved much either. So I'm really concerned about the potential involvement that guys like Watkins and Zacchaeus can have. Zacchaeus is only $200, but again, I just don't think that there's much kind of juice to squeeze out of him here. So I think I'm mainly just going to be sticking with these top 2 guys, and I give a slight edge to Devonta Smith here.
Fair enough. On the Minnesota side, you got probably the best, or one of the best wide receivers in the game, Justin Jefferson. He's got a little help this year, but Justin Jefferson, I asked Squirrel this last week how much he thinks about, like we were talking about Sauce Gardner and a potential shadow or a really good quarterback locked up on a wide receiver. Does anything like that scare you? How much does that ever scare you off in general? Not necessarily not, even though you do have a really good cornerback locking up on Jefferson. The whole shadow thing, are you one that factors that in, or do you just think it doesn't matter that much?
So I definitely think it matters to an extent, but I think more so it matters schematically, at least in my opinion. Like, I do think that for the most part, if an elite receiver is going one-on-one all day against an elite cornerback, then I think the receiver is going to have the edge, especially a guy like Jefferson. I don't really think you can put many guys across from him where I'm going to not like the matchup, but I do think that at times teams see that and they see weaknesses elsewhere, and they see, a real strength of a guy following Justin Jefferson and a lot of attention going to Justin Jefferson. That opens up things for everyone else. So I think that is sort of where it comes into play more. And every team's different. Every week is different for every team. So it's tough to really know. But for this week in particular, I'm not overly concerned with the matchup here for Jefferson. I still think that they're going to continue to give him the ball, but again, it might be just you're expecting a slight decrease in production based on the matchup here, but I wouldn't overreact to it a ton.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you right there, but that leads us to Jordan Addison, the rookie from USC or Pitt, wherever you want to claim him from. He's an impressive guy, really sharp route runner, does a lot of good things. I'm kind of looking at JJ thinking, just like you just said, if Minnesota goes into this thinking maybe we do have a hard time with Justin Jefferson because he's going to be locked up with Slay, or they're going to do whatever they can to contain him, maybe we're already game planning for a little Jordan Addison. Kind of like me some Jordan Addison tonight, man. What do you think about the rookie?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you just said, and I think taking that a step further, even as you look at who Addison's going to be lining up across from when he's on the field, is a second-year undrafted free agent there. So that's even more of a weakness to attack, obviously, with Slay following Jefferson around. And you can make the same case for KJ Osborne, right? Addison had a great game last week. He found the end zone, had 6 targets. But keep in mind, he was still tied with KJ Osborne in targets. He had fewer targets than Jefferson and Hockenson. So while I like Addison, I like the talent as well. The role right now, I think it'll definitely improve as the season goes on. So I like Addison quite a bit here, but I think I actually like KJ Osborne as a contrarian play. You see the projected ownership. I'm pretty comfortable saying that I do think that Addison will be more popular than KJ Osborne today. Addison's he's the bigger name. He's a guy that I think coming off of the scoring week last week, I think he'll get a little bit more buzz here. So if Osborne's going to be the low-owned piece from this Minnesota team, I don't mind taking a shot at him. He played a lot last week. He actually led the team in red zone looks as well. So KJ Osborne's a guy that I think is going to be quite contrarian and fairly interesting tonight.
I like that. You got to be contrarian in these things if you want to win them. So we'll figure it out. Let's talk about some tight ends now. And just like the wide receivers, both teams feature some pretty darn good tight ends. Hockenson on one side, Godare on the other. Tight ends are always in play on Showdown. Talk to me about the starters, how much you like them, and is there any reason in the world you would play one of these backup tight ends for any? I mean, just who knows? I mean, $200 might do it for you. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I guess we'll start with these really cheap guys. I guess if you wanted to make a case for one of them, I really don't think you need to, especially with the value at running back that we have on the Philly side. But Josh Oliver, he caught a couple of balls last week, and one of them I think was for 17 or 18 yards. If he does that again tonight at $800, that'll pay off that price. I don't know if I really love the ceiling here, but that's the case to be made if you do want one of those ultra punts that aren't one of the Philadelphia running backs. But in terms of these two starters, I love both of these guys today. I think you can make a really strong case for saying I'm going to try to get unique and forego each of the top receivers and actually start with these two tight ends in the same lineup. I think both of them have upside to score twice in one game. Dallas Goedert, we didn't see him get involved at all last week, but Sirianni came out and kind of said that was a mistake, and it kind of seems like we're getting the squeaky wheel narrative here for Goddard. And Hockenson, he had 9 targets, caught 8 of them, but didn't really do a ton, for excitement-wise, only 35 receiving yards. So both of these guys, I think, are on the up and up. I think we've seen a lot over the course of the last couple of days in the industry about how Hunter Henry sort of had that big day against Philly, and people sort of aligning that with the TJ Hockenson matchup. I think a lot can go wrong with saying, okay, we saw one thing in one game, let's apply it to all games going forward. But it certainly can't hurt to say, okay, this was clearly a weakness for them last week. They're going to have to worry about our running back. They're going to have to worry about Justin Jefferson, 2 other pretty solid receiving options as well. So I think Hockenson's going to be extremely involved in the offense, and I do think he's going to be able to find some soft spots in the defense. So Hockenson's one of my favorite plays of the night for sure.
I like that. All right, so we know kickers are in play always. It's a showdown, and you just never know. Defenses, on the other hand, kind of a polarizing thing. Some people like them, some people don't. We've seen them absolutely break the slate before. Dallas on the Showdown the other night was incredible. You've got 2 much different. One defense is pretty weak. One defense is really good. What's your thoughts on the defenses tonight?
Yeah, no interest in the Vikings defense. I typically like defense and showdowns when they're a little bit more contrarian, and I feel like a lot of times the people who really hate defenses and showdowns, they complain more when we're seeing a backup quarterback or a lower tier offense on the slate because that defense becomes popular. The Eagles are an elite defense. We know Kirk Cousins is fairly turnover prone, so I don't think this is a terrible spot to do so, but I just think that the lack of upside is really kind of daunting this current spot for the Eagles. And there's a lot of guys in the price range. So we just talked about KJ Osborne, who's $5K, slightly more expensive. We have all these Philly running backs, DeAndre Swift, $400 cheaper. So too many pass catchers and skill position players for me to have a ton of interest in the defenses here.
All right, so we kind of shot through some players there, and now we're gonna play a little bit of a game for the people that like this. We're gonna go a back and forth 2 times each. I'm gonna let you start us off with a captain, your favorite captain tonight. Then I'll fill in after you what I think goes well with that, and then we'll do that a couple times. Give me your favorite captain tonight.
So I do think that chalk is the way I'm probably going to go in my own lineup, but for the sake of this one, I want to have a little bit of fun. So let's start with Devonta Smith. I think he's going to be extremely low owned as a captain option. He's one of my favorite contrarian captain opt-ins of the week here, or of the night.
I like it. I love on DraftKings. Got to love some high volume wide receivers, and the captain are always solid, especially guys like this who could also hit a home run or catch touchdowns down in the red zone. He's got the total package. I like that. If I'm looking at that, I've got Devontae in captain, which is, if we're pulling up the ownership there, it's got to be somewhat contrarian. So I think we can, eat a little chalked in at flex and go Jalen Hurts. So I think if I'm gonna have a wide receiver there, I'm gonna take Jalen Hurts there as a flex to go along with that. Who you get? We got Devontae up top, followed by Hurts. What's your move?
Yeah, let's go to the other side here. I do like the Bills with a little bit more Eagles than Vikings tonight, but let's balance it out a little bit. Let's go TJ Hawkinson. I kind of gassed him up enough here, so I might as well call on his name here the first chance I get. Sub 7K. I think the price is fine. I think he's kind of actually in a good price for Showdown, where people aren't going to automatically lock him in here. And he might go a little bit overlooked just being a tight end, but I like him a lot tonight.
All right, I like that call, Hawkinson. We got Smith and Hurts in the passing game, Hawkinson in the passing game. I think this lineup is taking shape to be like an aerial thing here. So I don't know that I want any running game here. Kickers are too easy. I don't want the defenses. I'm like you, so I'm going to take me a pass catcher. This would leave us about 76 or a little bit less than that. Let me see. I'll take one from the Minnesota side, because I think it fits with the Devontae and captain. I mean, I gotta go Jordan Addison. I know you like Osborne, but Jordan's my guy, man. So I'm gonna put Jordan in there. If we're building this out, now we've got two elements of the passing game from each side. You can fill that out with whatever you want, guys. Like all kinds of options, but you see where we're going with it. I think it could be some points scored through the air, and I like the way that works. So let's look at FanDuel real quick. Is there anything that stands out to you on FanDuel here in this game with these players that jumps out a little bit more than DraftKings? We got about 9 minutes left here before this thing locks up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about FanDuel is, and I still like playing Showdown on FanDuel, but it's just not as fun on DraftKings because of the prices. They don't change at the captain position, so you really, don't have as much incentive to go down the board in terms of pricing for a captain. So, I do think it makes a lot of sense to start with, the guys with the highest amount of touchdown equity up top. So guys like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson. So on FanDuel, I think I actually like Justin Jefferson in the captain spot. If you're looking for a super contrarian option, I don't think it'll be super contrarian. So maybe I should kind of, re-speak on that one there. But in terms of him being a receiver on FanDuel and not being a quarterback, I think he'll have a couple of paths to being a little bit lower owned. And as you can see on the board there, Jalen Hurts should take up a lot of captain ownership. So I think we could take advantage of a guy like Justin Jefferson getting a little bit of a discount here on ownership.
All right, I like that. You like Jefferson. I like on FanDuel, running backs. I love some running backs, so I'm definitely going to be in play for these Philly guys tonight. Jalen Hurts in that MVP spot, going to be even more chalky over here because you don't get penalized with salary, and his ability to run the ball around the red zone or inside the 5 and get touchdowns is off the charts and you love touchdowns. You're hunting for touchdowns over here. So let's play the same little game, but I'm going to start it off this time. I get to pick the MVP. And Jalen Hurts is easy and it's low-hanging fruit. And I want to compete against 150,000 other teams, so I'm going to go different. I'm not going to play Hurts in the MVP spot. I think that makes you different. I'm going to say DeAndre Swift, and I'm going to say that I'll preface this by saying there was a question in chat here earlier, and let me see, something about the running back. Dave Jones, Penny, Swift, or Scott, which of these guys on DK? I'll say this much about it. You just don't know about this backfield tonight, any one of these three. Somebody said in chat you could, and I've done this before too, if you have multiple lineups, you could literally make, Doug Harrelson says, you can make the same lineup 3 times and just put a different Philly running back in the one spot each time. I think that's very viable tonight because I don't know what it's going to be. But for the sake of this build, I'm going to say I think it's going to be Swift. And in this case, I'm looking for Swift, and maybe we do get inside the 10, and maybe it's Swift instead of Hurts who runs it in. Maybe I'm stealing all those rushing touchdowns from Hurts, thus denying him the MVP, being the nuts in the MVP, and I get Swift, and he's the nuts, and all of a sudden so I'm going DeAndre Swift in the MVP to be different here. I want you to follow that up.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious your thoughts here. I'll bounce an idea off you here. On DraftKings, it's a little bit easier to do because of the price for all of these guys, but I'm thinking, multiple Eagles running backs, especially in lineups that aren't focused around the passing game. Obviously, if you don't have Hurts in the MVP or if you don't have any of these pass catchers, I really don't mind using multiple Eagles running backs, especially on DraftKings where they're a bit cheaper, a little bit more price efficient there. But, Rashad Penny, I still don't mind the price here. And I think that in a world where Swift does score 1 or 2 times, Penny could also score once. He could also rack up some yards. I do think that all these guys are going to see a good amount of work here. So curious your thoughts there, but I guess for this experiment specifically, I'll just go ahead and I'll put Justin Jefferson in the slot here. I like him quite a bit today, and I'm not really too scared of the matchup. I think he's still going to be a really high upside option here, but what are your thoughts on those running backs in the same lineup?
I do that in college all the time, and it's a great thing in college because there's like some teams have endless amounts of points, and the Eagles are probably the closest thing to like a college kind of atmosphere. Like they can put up just tons of points, especially in a matchup with Minnesota. My God, they could be crazy. So I understand it. I get it. I think Swift and Penny are so similar. It feels like one of them is going to get there and one of them won't.
Yeah.
But Boston Scott comes in, and I think he's very viable with either one of the other guys. And then there's the thought that, hey, man, what if it's just like pounding the ball down the field and you get inside the 10 and whoever's on the field is going to get touchdowns at the running back spot. Sometimes it might be Penny, sometimes it might be Swift, and they might eat up 3 or 4 touchdowns between the two of them and might take everything from Hurts. So I get it. And it's like I said, in college, I think it's very viable. I do it all the time in great matchups. Well, this is a very close to a college matchup almost for Philly if they get to rolling here. So, but I like the fact that we got Swift in the MVP. We can be chalky elsewhere because Swift is not chalk in the MVP, not at all. So I like that one. If I was looking at this, I got to go Kirk Cousins here. I got to go Cousins to Jefferson with Swift up top, and then I'm gonna let you finish it off with one more player here on FanDuel. But I feel like that gives us Minnesota passing game, trying to play catch up because Swift pounded in a bunch of touchdowns so far. So I'll let you round us out here.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same sort of game script here. So I'm glad you went with Cousins. I'm going to throw in Dallas Goedert. I really like the theme of low owned or cheaper players with touchdown equity. And I think Dallas Goedert is just that, right? He's sub 10K on FanDuel. He has a touchdown equity being a tight end with that red zone and end zone role here. And again, I kind of mentioned earlier, with that squeaky wheel narrative, those things come into play even more when you get down by the end zone there. So I think we're going to see a handful of touchdowns here, or touchdown opportunities here for the Eagles. I think the running backs and Goddard are people that can take a lot of advantage of those.
Oh, I like that. I think that build looking good. All right. We got about 3.5 minutes left. We'll get to some questions right now. Yappy Cappy got me this one in Discord. He says, I'm torn for cash. Madison and A.J. Brown or Jefferson and Goddard? I'll let Kyle take that one first. Madison and Brown or Jefferson and Goddard?
I'm going to go Jefferson and Goddard. I don't really love the matchup for Madison, so I'll go with those guys.
I agree. Hound said earlier, best option to score a rushing touchdown for Philly other than Hurts. I'm going with Swift. I'd like to see Kyle's opinion on this. A rushing touchdown other than Hurts for Philly.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Rashad Penny. I think Swift can get involved as well, and I think they'll use him in the passing game. They'll have some design plays for him, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Penny get trotted out there as the goal line guy.
Squirrel asks on FanDuel, large field contest, large field GPP, your favorite contrarian MVP. I've given Swift. I'd like to hear what you say for your favorite contrarian in a large field on FanDuel.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I tend to not go towards the pass catchers too much for really contrarian options. So I agree with you. I'll go with an Eagles running back, and I'll take Swift as well. I know I just talked about Penny as the most likely to score the touchdown there or get the end zone work. But in terms of upside, I think Swift has a higher ceiling than Penny tonight.
We got Derek says, with Minnesota on a short week, I think this is a valid question here on all Thursday night games. With Minnesota on a short week, do we think we see more from the backups, tight ends, and running backs?
I think we'll just naturally see Ty Chandler get worked in more. I think a short week will help that for sure. But I think, as the year goes on, we'll see Chandler get worked in more. So I would definitely agree with that. And I think that's probably just something that we should keep an eye on every week, regardless of the short week or not for this Minnesota team. But I think this week makes perfect sense for that.
Friend of the show. It's time. Friend of the show, our buddy. Respect. If you haven't been here, Kyle, I apologize. It's going to shock you. His name's Butthole Jenkins. All right, he's good people. A friend of the show. This is our thing here. We do this for baseball and showdowns and there. He always asks, "What is my fill it in your plums play of the night?" All right, so I've already talked this guy up. Right, when the Eagles traded for DeAndre Swift, I was very angry that the Cowboys didn't make that. It was very low draft equity, like a 4th round pick. The guy's was awesome in college. He was really good at Detroit. He just couldn't stay healthy. Now you get your chance with Gainwell out. I'm going DeAndre Swift, man. I like DeAndre Swift as that guy. So you got one guy that stands out for you tonight, Kyle, before we jump out of here?
Yeah, I like the Swift call. I think he has a nice little ceiling play. But I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson. I think he scores twice tonight. I think he racks up a handful of catches as well. So I'm going with Hawkinson.
All right, guys. We're down under a minute, so we're going to let you get out and finish your builds. It was good having you. We'll be back on Monday. There'll be a Sunday show too, but I'll be back on Monday Night Football doing it all over again for Kyle Murray, our show's head shopper. Good luck in those GPP guys. We'll see you later.